The White House has been rocked yet again by anonymous warnings about the president's fitness for office, and yet Republicans are still moving forward with his Supreme Court pick. For more on this, it's time for a closer look. Trump is being allowed to fill a lifetime seat to the nation's highest court despite constant leaks about how dangerous and erratic he is. Every day, new details emerge from famed journalist Bob Woodward's upcoming book, Fear, whose cover looks like a Lifetime movie poster about an evil stepfather. And those details confirm that Trump is as vulgar and petulant in private as he is in public. In the book, even his own aides describe Trump as an unhinged idiot and professional liar who acted like and had the understanding of a 5th or 6th grader. Of course, you don't need a book to know that. You just need eyeballs and ear holes. Trump is in private exactly as he seems to be in public. It's both shocking and not surprising at the same time. I mean, the guy literally misspelled his own wife's name in a tweet. Not like he's doing that in public and then in private besting world leaders in games of chess. Bad news, Angela. It seems you failed to counteract my queen's gambit by taking my pawn, and now my knight has your king in check. So if you'll excuse me, I have to meet my wife, Melanoma. Now, one of the most eye-catching allegations in the book is that Trump's closest aides have resorted to hiding documents from him to stop him from signing or reading them.
Woodward describes an administrative coup d'etat and a nervous breakdown of the executive branch, with senior aides conspiring to pluck official papers from the president's desk so he couldn't see or even sign them.
Woodward also details the actions of some top aides in the White House, including former economic advisor, Goldman Sachs veteran Gary Cohn. Quote, according to Woodward, Cohn stole a letter off Trump's desk that the president was intending to sign to formally withdraw the U.S. from a trade agreement with South Korea.
Porter consulted Cohn, Gary Cohn, who told him, according to Woodward, quote, I can stop this. I'll just take the paper off his desk.
The craziest thing about that story is that if you steal a piece of paper from Trump's desk, he won't even know it's gone. He's like a guy who's blown away by the first half of a magic trick. Oh my God, how did you get that lady inside the box? And this isn't even the first time there's been an explosive allegation from a tell-all book about how the Trump White House deals with paper. You might remember that just a few weeks ago, former Trump aide Omarosa Manigault Newman wrote in her book that she once saw Trump eat paper in the Oval Office. Now, in fairness, maybe he was just eating it so Gary Cohn couldn't steal it first. Gary comes in late at night looking for it, and then Trump flips on a light and says, oh, are you looking for your paper, Gary? Because I'm afraid I put it somewhere safe, my belly. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to meet my wife, Majorca. But the book is also filled with stories from Trump aides who have loyally served him and agree with most of his agenda, trying to cast themselves as heroic saviors protecting the republic from the whims of a madman. For example, Cohn threatened to resign after Trump's comments on Charlottesville, but Trump persuaded his economic advisor to stay on. Chief of Staff John Kelly then confided to Cohn that he shared Cohn's horror at Trump's handling of the tragedy and shared Cohn's fury with Trump. Kelly told Cohn, I would have taken that resignation letter and shoved it up his ass 6 different times. Man, I would have loved to see that conversation. I'm going to shove this resignation letter up your ass. Oh, yeah? Well, I'm going to shove it in my mouth, and it'll end up in the same place. Second, it's easy to talk tough, but unless you're actually willing to resign and tell the American people everything you know, then your tough talk is worthless. John Kelly's like a kid who tells his friends he's going to stand up to the bully who steals his lunch money, and then when lunchtime comes, tells the bully, keep shaking, there's more in my back pocket. Now, Trump has denied all of this, and yesterday in the Oval Office, he called Woodward's book a work of fiction, but that's not what he told Woodward on the phone when he called him just a few weeks ago to complain that he hadn't been interviewed for the book. Woodward recorded the call, and Trump was very complimentary.
I spent a lot of time on this, talked to lots of people.
Right, good.
And as you know and are living, we're at a pivot point in history.
Right.
And I would have liked to have done that, and I maximized my effort.
Right.
And somehow it didn't get to you, or
It's really too bad because nobody told me about it, and I would have loved to have spoken to you. You know I'm very open to you. I think you've always been fair.
Oh, my God. How is there always a secret tape that contradicts everything Trump says? Although I guess I shouldn't be surprised the same guy who can be tricked into not signing a piece of paper doesn't realize everyone around him has a GoPro strapped to their heads. But hey, in fairness to Trump, he probably didn't know he was being recorded.
I'm turning
Good.
on my tape recorder
Oh, that's
with
okay.
your permission.
That's okay.
Oh my God. He's like a... He's like a bank robber who waves at the security camera. The craziest part of this phone call is when Trump explains that his aides never asked him if he wanted to do an interview with Woodward because they were too afraid.
It was a chance missed, and I don't know how things work over there in terms
Very well.
of getting to you.
Well, if you would call Madeline in my office, did you speak to Madeline?
No, I didn't, but
Madeline is the key. She's the secret
I
because
talked
she's
to Raj
she's
about
the
it.
person.
I talked to Kelly.
Well, a lot of them are afraid to come and talk, but you never called for me. It would have been nice, Bob, if you
Well,
called
I
for me in my office. I mean, I have a secretary. I have 3 secretaries. If you would have called directly, a lot of people are afraid.
So to recap, Trump says Bob Woodward's book is a work of fiction because he never spoke to Woodward because his aides were too afraid to talk to him about doing an interview for Woodward's book, which is literally called Fear. Trump is such a bad liar, even his lies prove that he's lying. Your book called Fear is totally inaccurate, and I would have told you that if my aides weren't too afraid to come talk to me. Now, if you excuse me, I have to meet my wife, mesothelioma. That's it. I got it right. That's definitely right. For almost 2 years, we've had this frustrating spectacle of Trump's closest aides anonymously warning us that the president they work for is erratic and dangerous, but refusing to actually do anything about it. And yesterday, we got the most stunning example of that yet from an anonymous op-ed in the New York Times titled, "I am part of the resistance inside the Trump administration," warning about Trump's erratic and reckless behavior. And now the op-ed has put Trump supporters in the weird position of having to defend the president's mental health, like South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham, who said this Wednesday on CNN.
To those who believe that this man is a fool, that this man is crazy, that there's something wrong with Donald Trump and it's just the people around him that keep us safe, you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, if you're out there saying Trump's a kook, or he's crazy, or he's unfit for office, you don't know what you're talking about.
I think he's a kook. I think he's crazy. I think he's unfit for office.
Oh my God, the author of the op-ed was Lindsey Graham. That would explain the paragraph where he calls Trump crazier than a wet mule eating corn through a picket fence. But this week has been a perfect distillation of the GOP's complicity in the Trump debacle because even as a parade of Trump officials quietly warn the public that he's unfit for office, they're letting him hang around to fill a lifetime seat on the Supreme Court with his handpicked nominee, Brett Kavanaugh. And in his confirmation hearing so far, Kavanaugh has been exactly the kind of loyal partisan Trump would want. For example, he's been asked a series of questions that could be crucial to the Russia investigation, like, can the president pardon himself? Does he have to comply with a subpoena? And every time, he has refused to answer even those basic questions.
President Trump claims he has an absolute right to pardon himself, does he?
The question of self-pardons is something I have never analyzed.
Can a sitting president be required to respond to a subpoena?
So that's a hypothetical question.
No, it's not. The president's lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, is on TV every day talking about how Trump would just ignore a subpoena. You know, this guy always looked like he just had a resignation letter shoved up his ass. I mean, it's mind-boggling that we're even considering allowing a president to fill a lifetime seat on the Supreme Court while his own aides warn the public that he's unfit for office. But that's the corrupt bargain the GOP has made. They're not heroes containing Trump. They're collaborators working with him, even though they know he's
A kook.
This has been a closer look.